"You're not needed at the wedding," she said, and the words settled in me like a slow ache. They did not cut. They did not shout. They just pressed down, the way a heavy book rests on a soft table, leaving a quiet dent that stays even after you lift it. I stood there with the phone against my ear and felt my breath go small. I am me. I am a mother. I have tried to live a gentle life. If you are sitting with me now, thank you for being here. Smash that like button right now. Subscribe to this channel and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. I love knowing where hearts are listening from. It makes this big world feel a little closer. When I heard those words, I did not argue. I did not beg to be useful. I said, "Okay," and my voice sounded like someone else's voice, thin and far away. Then I put the phone down and wrapped both hands around my tea mug, and I let the steam touch my face until I could breathe again. I want to tell you this story slowly and kindly. I will tell you how I did not shout, and I did not fight, and still I found a way to be present. I will tell you how I ended up buying the wedding venue and why it was not revenge. It was a different kind of choice. A choice to protect a place meant for love and to set a soft line where respect could live. You might wonder how someone like me could do such a big thing. I wondered too. I am not flashy. I do not like scenes, but I know about care and I know about rooms that hold memories. I know about keeping a light on, even when your own feelings are dim. So this is not a story about winning. It is not a story about proving someone wrong. It is a story about staying. It is about the quiet strength of a mother who wanted a seat, not a spotlight, and found a way to offer both to everyone. I will begin at the beginning before the call, before the tears I wiped away with the back of my hand. Let me take a sip of tea. Let me set the cup down. Take a breath with me. And come sit at my kitchen table where the window shows a small yard and the kettle hums, and I will tell you how we got here. I live a simple life. I wake up early because the house is quiet in the morning, and quiet is a kind friend. I open the kitchen curtains and look at the small herb garden I planted after my husband died. Mint, thyme, and rosemary make little green flags in the light. I put the kettle on. I have the same blue mug every day because it feels steady in my hand. I am a widow. My husband, Daniel, was a kind man with a small workshop where he fixed chairs and built little shelves for anyone who needed them. He passed on 8 years ago after a short illness that came like a storm. We had expected to grow old in these rooms together, but life turned. When he was gone, I learned how to make the bed on one side and leave the other side smooth. I work at the school library. It is a small job with small pay, but it gives me a rhythm. I like the smell of old paper and the sound of children whispering a little too loud. I know where the dog books are, and the baking books, and the comics that always go missing. Sometimes I sit at the desk and tape torn covers, and it feels like healing in plain view. After school, I walk home. I pass the bakery, where the owner always waves with flour on his hands. I water the herbs, feed the birds, and keep a small notebook where I write what needs doing. In the evening, I make tea and read a few pages of something gentle. I try not to fall into the hole of missing. I have learned to live beside it. My son Evan grew up in this house. He is tall now, with a calm voice and a soft laugh, but in my mind he is sometimes still the boy who brought a baseball glove to the breakfast table. He would eat oatmeal with one hand and tap the glove with the other, as if the ball might come flying through the kitchen at any moment. I used to say, "Sweetheart, the pitch is not coming to the oatmeal," and he would grin. We baked cinnamon rolls on Saturdays. I let him measure the flour, and we made a mess without shame. The dough stuck to his fingers, and he would shake his hands until flour fell like light snow across the counter. The whole house smelled of sugar and spice, and we would eat one roll hot, standing by the window, blowing on our fingers and laughing. Evan liked books too. He would sit at the kitchen table after school and read with his cheek in his hand. Sometimes his lips moved as if he wanted to taste the words. When homework made him frown, I would bring him a small plate of apple slices and say, "Take a breath." He would nod. He always nodded to me like that, with trust. Daniel taught him to throw a ball in the yard while I watched from the steps. They would shout, "Ready? Ready!" and the ball would arc through the evening light. On rainy days, we set up an indoor field with rolled-up socks and played gentle catch across the living room rug. We were careful with the lamp by the piano. We had rules. We laughed when we broke them. When Daniel died, Evan was home from college for the weekend. He sat with me at the kitchen table and held my hand. He did not say much. We are both quiet people. But that night he made tea, and he carried the cups so carefully you would have thought they were precious stones. In that small act, I felt the next part of our life begin. Years passed. Evan finished his degree, found work at a local tech company, and rented a small apartment not far from here. He came by for dinner most Sundays and took leftovers with him in neat containers. He fixed my leaky sink and showed me how to use the new app for the utility bill. He still tapped his fingers when he was thinking. He still nodded when he said goodbye. He met Lena at a friend's game night. That is what he told me. "She is sweet, Mom," he said. "She likes quiet things." He smiled in a way that made his eyes gentle. I felt a warm curiosity. I asked what she liked to eat. He said, "She's not picky, but she likes anything with lemon." They came for dinner on a Thursday. I made baked chicken with lemon and herbs, roasted potatoes, and green beans with a little butter and salt. I set the table with my good plates and the simple white cloth that Daniel loved because it made everything look like Sunday. When the doorbell rang, I wiped my hands on a towel and took a breath. Lena is a pretty girl with careful eyes. She said, "Thank you for having me," in a voice that seemed lighter than air. She brought a small bouquet of daisies wrapped in brown paper. She stood very straight, like a child told to behave in a certain room. I said, "You are so welcome," and I meant it. We ate and talked about small things. Evan told a funny story from work about a printer that had a mood. I told one about a second grader who whispered to me, "Books are magic, Mrs. Harper," and then asked me not to tell anyone he had said it. Lena smiled with her lips closed. She was polite and kind. At times. She looked like she was checking for the right answer in the air. She mentioned her mother, Janice. "My mom likes things just so," Lena said, folding her napkin into a tidy square. "She has high standards." She said it as if it were a weather report. Not praise, not complaint, just a fact. I nodded and poured more tea. Standards can be a blessing. They can also be heavy. When they left that night, Lena hugged me lightly. "This was lovely," she said. "Your home is so cozy." Evan kissed my cheek. "Thanks, Mom." I stood in the doorway and watched them walk to the car under the soft streetlight. I remember thinking, she is gentle, she is careful, this could work. A few months later, on a quiet Sunday afternoon, Evan came by alone. He looked like a boy again, standing in the kitchen with his hands in his pockets. He said, "Mom." I turned. His smile was shy and full at the same time. He held out a small box. "We're engaged," he said, and he laughed, and it sounded like church bells. I put my hand over my mouth and then over my heart. "Oh, Evan," I said. Tears filled my eyes. I do not cry loudly. Tears just arrive and sit there until they fall. I hugged him long and soft. I felt the shape of him, the same boy who once balanced a baseball glove on his knee at breakfast, and I thought, we made it to this day. He showed me the ring on his phone, a simple, lovely thing. "She said yes right away," he told me. "She cried." He bit his lip like he was trying not to cry too. "She's calling her mom," he said, and I felt a small flicker of caution. Then I let it fade. This was joy. "I am so happy for you both," I said. "I am here to help if you want help. I will not push." He nodded. "I know, Mom." His voice was soft. He looked relieved, as if he had worried I would grip the day too tightly. I wanted to show him I could be open hands. We talked about early plans. They had a budget in mind, not huge, not tiny. They wanted a place that felt like home, with trees and space for light. They wanted something simple and honest. Evan said Lena had a folder of pictures on her phone with white chairs on grass, long tables with candles, and cakes without too much frosting. I smiled. "It sounds like love," I said. They asked if I knew of any venues nearby. I told them about Willow House, a place just outside town where people had held events for years. I had been to a retirement party there once, and I remembered the way the willow branches framed the pond like open arms. "There's a couple who own it," I said. "Mr. and Mrs. Collins. They are old-fashioned in the best way." We made an appointment for a Saturday morning. The sky was pale and clear, and the breeze carried the smell of grass. We drove down the long lane to Willow House and parked by the low stone wall. The house sat soft and white, with green shutters and a big porch. The willow trees bent toward the water like they were listening for secrets. Mr. Collins met us at the door. He wore a suit that had seen many happy days. His smile had the kindness that comes with time. "Welcome to Willow House," he said. "I'm Thomas, and this is my Ellen." Mrs. Collins appeared from behind him with a basket of cookies. "They're still warm," she said, and she pressed the basket into Lena's hands as if she had been waiting for her all morning. We walked the grounds. The ceremony space was a small clearing by the pond with white folding chairs in easy rows. There was a wooden arch that could hold flowers, or vines, or nothing at all. The reception room was bright with old windows and polished floorboards that had seen 1,000 footsteps. I watched Lena as she looked around. I saw her shoulders drop a little, the way shoulders do when they find a place they trust. "It's beautiful," she said. It was the first time I had heard her voice settle low like that. Evan took her hand. He looked at me and gave a small nod. It was not a call for approval and not an ask for permission. It was a share. It was love in motion. We sat at a round table with Mr. and Mrs. Collins and talked about dates and deposits. They were careful and clear. They talked about the sound system, the kitchen area for the caterer, and the rain plan if weather turned. They had a list of local bakers and florists. They handed us a small packet of papers tied with a ribbon that had faded from many binders. It felt like being welcomed into a circle. I kept my voice quiet and my hands folded. When questions came up, I looked to Evan and Lena. If they turned to me, I answered simply. When they chose a date in early summer, I touched the edge of the table and felt a soft thrill. I did not clap. I did not cry, but I felt like someone had placed a small light in my chest. On the way home, sitting in the passenger seat, I looked out at the fields and thought about how life collects places. Kitchens, yards, porches, now a pond with willow trees. I thought about Daniel and his way of saying, "Let them lead me." I smiled at nothing and everything. The road moved under us and the day felt clean. At home that night, I stood at the sink and washed the few dishes we had used. I took one of Daniel's old shirts from the laundry basket where I keep household rags. It was blue, soft from many washes. I folded it and put it back. Not yet, I thought. Some things need to wait for their own time. I ran a cloth over the countertop, slow and easy. I made a quiet promise to myself. I would be a calm guest in my own heart. I would honor their choices. I would speak kindness. I would step back before I stepped forward. If they needed me, they would ask. If they did not, I would still be there, steady as a chair at the table. The next weeks were made of small plans. Lena sent me a few photos now and then, flowers in soft colors, a dress with sleeves, a cake with lemon. I sent back hearts and "It's lovely," because it was. Evan came by and fixed the loose handle on my cupboard. We ate soup and talked about the weather. The ordinary days held us like hands. Once Lena mentioned her mother again. "Mom has opinions," she said, and there was a tiny smile at the edge of her mouth that felt brave. "She'll be involved," I nodded. "Of course," I said. "Mothers often are. I can be involved too, or quiet, just say the word." She said, "Thank you," and I could tell she heard that as a gift. I kept my promise. I did not call to ask about the dress. I did not send recipes for cakes. I walked by Willow House on my afternoon walks once or twice and looked across the water. The willow branches drew lines in the pond like a child's fingers in sand. I thought of Evan standing there in a suit. I thought of Lena's careful face softening into joy. The library kept me grounded. I shelved returns and showed children how to find their places. A little girl asked me if I believed in happy endings. I said, "I believe in kind middles." She looked at me for a long time and then nodded, as if I had told her a secret. After she left, I wrote those words in my notebook, kind middles. I wanted that for us. At night, I slept well enough. I dreamed of chairs in neat rows and the sound of water. I dreamed of Daniel sitting on the porch, his hand tapping his knee to a song I could not hear. I woke with tears sometimes, not from sadness, but from fullness. Life had taken and given. Both are true. Both can live in the same house. I held on to my promise in the small ways. When people at church asked about the plans, I smiled and said, "They're finding their way." When a friend offered me a stack of bridal magazines, I took only one, and I left it on the coffee table like a soft wish. When I felt an urge to be useful, I baked bread and gave it to the neighbor who had a new baby. I poured my hands into where they were truly needed. And every now and then, I made tea in my blue mug and sat by the window with the herb garden in view. The rosemary stood upright like a tiny soldier. The thyme made a soft, friendly shape. I pressed a leaf between my fingers and breathed in the green scent. It smelled like home. It smelled like patience. It smelled like the promise I had made to be steady and good. I did not know then how tested that promise would be. I did not know the words that were coming and how they would sit in my chest like a weight. But I knew who I wanted to be. A mother who loved without fuss. A guest who stayed close without crowding. A woman who could hold both joy and quiet in the same breath. The first small change arrived as a light note on my phone. Lena wrote, "We're going dress shopping next Saturday. It's just for the bride and her mom, a little tradition." I read it twice, then 3 times. I looked at my tea. I typed back, "That sounds lovely. I hope it's a joyful day." I had never expected to be the one holding the mirror. I had promised myself I would not push. Still, I had pictured sitting on a small stool and saying, "You look like yourself," when she found the dress that felt like home on her body. I set that picture down inside me, like a magazine folded closed. On Saturday morning, I stayed busy. I clipped the thyme in the garden and swept the kitchen floor. I baked banana bread for the neighbor down the block, the one who had just had her second baby and could use the smell of comfort. I checked my phone once or twice. No photos came. I told myself, it is okay. That afternoon, Evan stopped by with a bag of oranges. He set them on the counter and leaned against the sink. "How was your morning?" he asked. I smiled at him and pointed to the banana bread cooling on the rack. "Productive," I said. He nodded, and his eyes moved for a moment, as if he were placing something in a careful spot. "Lena and her mom had a good time," he said. "I think she found a dress idea she likes." He watched my face. I lifted my eyebrows softly, the way I do when I want to be welcoming without stirring the water. "I'm happy for her," I said. He touched my shoulder. It was a light touch, a thanks and an apology and a love all in one. The next week, a message came about the menu tasting. It had been scheduled for Thursday evening. I had kept the night open, not because I was needed, but because I liked knowing I could be nearby. A new message said, "We're going to reschedule. The chef had a conflict. We'll keep you posted." I gave a small nod at my phone and went back to folding towels. On Friday morning, scrolling through photos while I waited for the kettle to sing, I saw a snapshot. It was Lena and her mother at a restaurant table with small plates and little forks. The caption read, "Tasting day, lemon everything." I felt my heart slide a little. Maybe the chef had only had room for 2. Maybe it was a misunderstanding. I put the phone down and stood by the window until the sky looked soft again. There was a group chat that started somewhere off to the side of my life. I learned about it when Evan showed me a picture of a centerpiece idea. I saw the title on top of the screen, Wedding Plan Core. I did not ask who was in it. I could guess. He said, "What do you think?" I said, "It's pretty." He nodded. He looked like a man trying to balance 2 plates in one hand. "Mom," he said, and his voice was gentle, "some of this stuff they want to keep small, fewer voices." He paused. "It's not about you, it's easier." I took a breath. I thought of my promise. "I understand," I said. "If you need me, tell me. If not, I'm cheering from here." He gave me a small smile that looked like gratitude and worry sitting together. I kept going to the library and to the bakery and to the small garden. I kept my feet in the life I knew. But little by little, I felt like a person standing in a hallway, listening to a party in a room with the door almost closed. There was laughter in there. There were decisions. I did not knock. I listened for my name, and when I did not hear it, I told myself it was fine. One afternoon, Lena asked if I might meet her at the floral shop. She said the owner wanted to see some family colors in case I had a small piece of ribbon or fabric that mattered. I wrapped a bit of vintage ribbon from my grandmother's sewing basket around a card. It was a faded rose color that looked like old joy. I put it in my purse and walked to the shop with a hopeful heart. The floral shop smelled like green things and water. There were buckets of stems and a wall of ribbon spools. Lena stood near the counter, straight as always, with a small bundle of ideas in her hand. Beside her was a woman with perfect hair and a neat coat. I knew it was Janice before she turned. A mother knows a mother, the way birds know a change in weather. "Me," Lena said, and she took a small step toward me. "This is my mom." I put out my hand. "Janice," I said. She took my hand and held it like a polite object. "Hello," she said. Her smile was delicate, like fine china you only bring out for guests. "We are very excited," she added, but her eyes did not look excited. They looked awake and careful. The florist, a young woman named Talia, spread out some pictures. "We can do lush garden," she said, "or something more structured, soft, wild, or sleek." She glanced at me and then at Janice. She had been in enough rooms to know the currents. Janice tapped one picture with a fingernail. "We want clean lines," she said. "Nothing rustic, no burlap, no mason jars, no lace, sleek, city, minimal. Our guests are used to a certain standard." She looked at me with a warm smile that did not reach her eyes. "Do you know what I mean?" I nodded. "I hear you," I said. "No one is talking about burlap." I smiled at Talia so she would not feel caught between two shores. I set the ribbon on the counter. "This is from my grandmother's basket," I said. "No pressure to use it. It is just a color that has felt like home to the women in my family." Janice looked at the ribbon the way you might look at a photograph of people you do not know. "It's sweet," she said, and the word sweet felt like something soft left out in the sun. "But we are going for timeless, not quaint." She nodded at Talia. "You know, not dated." The word landed with a small thud in my chest. Dated. I took a quiet breath. "Sleek can still be warm," I said, and I kept my voice calm. "You will make it beautiful." I pushed the ribbon back toward my purse. I did not want it to be a question that needed an answer. Lena looked from her mother to me. "The garden look at Willow House is already so pretty," she said softly. "We can let the space speak." Janice touched Lena's wrist. "The space is fine," she said, "but a wedding is a statement. People remember if you do it right." She smiled again. "We will do it right." I felt my body lean back an inch, the way you lean back when a wave comes up higher on the beach than you expected. I steadied myself. I told Talia the flowers all looked lovely. I told Lena I could stop by the bakery later and ask about lemon tarts if she wanted. Lena said, "Maybe," and then, "I'll let you know." I nodded. On my way home, I walked slowly. I watched a child on a scooter in front of her house, her father walking behind like a gentle guard. I remembered holding Evan's bicycle seat and whispering, "I've got you," while he wobbled into his first glide. I whispered it to myself now. "I've got you." I meant the mother inside me who wanted to be useful. A few days later, the phone rang just as I was settling at the table with my tea. It was Lena. Her voice was smaller than usual, like she was speaking through a sleeve. "Hi, me," she said. "Do you have a minute?" I said, "Of course," and set my cup down so I could hold the phone with both hands. She took a breath I could hear. "We're trying to keep things simple," she said. "Less moving parts, less pressure on everyone." She paused, as if counting her words. "I don't want you to stress about anything," she said. "We have it covered." "I'm not stressed," I said. "I'm cheering for you." "I know," she said, and her voice trembled. "I know you are. I think it might be best if you're not needed at the wedding. Just relax and enjoy as a guest." The sentence landed in my ear and then sank through me, slow and heavy. I stared at the window where the rosemary grew up straight and the thyme made its soft shape beside it. I felt a small tremble in my hands, like the cups at the library when a train goes by. "All right," I said. My voice sounded far away. "Thank you for telling me." "I didn't mean it. I meant, this is coming out wrong," she said quickly. "I just want you to enjoy the day. No worries, no tasks, no pressure." She was trying to be kind. I could hear the effort. I could hear her fear. "I understand," I said. "Enjoy your planning. I'm here if you need anything." We said goodbye. I pressed the phone to my chest for a moment, like you do with a letter that startles you. Then I placed it on the table and wrapped my hands around my mug so the heat could tell my skin that the world was still warm. I did not sob. I do not know how to sob. Instead, tears came slow, like the last part of rain after a storm. They dropped onto my hands and made little round spots. I watched them and let them be. When there were no more, I stood and washed my face with cool water. I looked at myself in the mirror. I looked like someone who knows the shape of silence. That evening, Evan came by to check the porch light. He had a toolbox in his hand. He looked at me with the careful look children get when they are no longer children and they are trying to read what is written on their mother's face. "Mom," he asked, quiet. I smiled to tell him the air was safe. "We can keep the porch light for later," I said. "Tell me how you are." He set the toolbox down. He ran a hand through his hair and exhaled. "It's a lot," he said. "It's good, it's just a lot." He waited. I waited with him. Then he said, without looking directly at me, "Mom, it's their day." He still calls himself part of them and part of me, and he stands in the doorway between. "Lena, she's Mom. It's just easier if there are fewer people trying to help. You know." His mouth looked tight. His eyes looked sorry. I nodded. "I do know," I said. "I want it to be beautiful for you both. I will be a guest. I will smile and clap. I will be proud." He nodded quick, like a boy relieved of a chore. Then he stepped forward and hugged me. He took one breath against my shoulder. I placed my hand flat between his shoulder blades and rubbed once, the way I did when he was little. We did not cry. We stood with the air around us saying nothing. After he left, I sat at the kitchen table with a piece of paper and a pen. I wrote a letter to Lena in my neat library handwriting. I kept it simple. I wrote, "Dear Lena, thank you for speaking to me honestly. I will respect your space and your choices. I will keep my distance and be joyful from where I am. I love you because you love my son. I am here if needed. Warmly, me." I put the letter in an envelope and walked it to their mailbox at dusk. I slipped it inside and touched the metal for a moment, like a blessing. The next day, I received a text. It said, "Thank you." There was a small heart. I looked at the heart for a long time. It felt like a leaf pressed between pages. Life kept its rhythm. The library, the garden, the kettle. I did not follow the wedding talk. I let it run like a river beside my path. But rivers change the ground near them, even when you do not get your feet wet. I could feel the earth under me shifting a little, and I tried to keep my steps steady. One afternoon, I found the vintage ribbon in my purse and thought again of offering it. Not as a plan, not as a push, only as a bit of color if it was wanted. I baked a small lemon loaf, wrapped it in a clean towel, and walked to Willow House to drop both off with a note. For anyone who might like it. No need to use. Warmly, me. The day was bright and mild. The lane to Willow House bent around fields where early summer had painted everything lush. When I came up the path to the main house, I saw the door was open. Inside, there was the clink of a teacup and the hush of people speaking quietly. I knocked on the doorframe anyway and stepped in. Mr. and Mrs. Collins were at a table in the front room. The room always smelled faintly of beeswax and old wood polish. On the table was a neat stack of papers and a folder with big letters on the cover. For sale. Mrs. Collins looked up at me with a brave smile that wobbled. "Me," she said. "What a surprise. Come in." I set the lemon loaf on the sideboard and held up the ribbon with a small laugh. "I thought this might like to visit," I said. "No pressure." Mr. Collins stood with the effort of someone who has stood up for many guests in his life. "You are kind," he said. "You always bring the right sort of quiet." I glanced at the folder and then back at their faces. "Is everything all right?" I asked. I kept my voice gentle as if I were approaching a shy animal. Mrs. Collins straightened the stack of papers and then stilled her hands on top of them. "We're retiring," she said. "We must." She looked at Mr. Collins. He nodded, his mouth making a flat line that held many feelings. "We love this place," he said, "but my knees don't love it the same way anymore, and Ellen's shoulder, well," he shrugged. "We promised each other we'd stop while we could still walk through the garden and know we kept our promises to people." "We worry," Mrs. Collins added. "Who will buy a place like this? A person who loves it, or a person who will turn it into something else?" She looked at me. "We have brides booked through next year. We have deposits, of course, and all the plans hanging in the air. It's a fragile thing, passing on a place that holds so many days." I sat down in one of the chairs by the window. The light fell across the floor in a kind of hush. "Do the couples know?" I asked. "Not yet," Mr. Collins said. We will tell them when we have a buyer who will honor everything. We will make it right. That is what keeps me up at night, not the money, the keeping it right. I looked at the archway that led to the hall, at the scuffs on the baseboard that told of chairs carried in and out, at the picture on the wall of a willow tree drawn by a child's hand. The house felt alive with voices. Laughter. Music. Vows said softly. I could almost hear them, like a radio playing in another room. "I will tell you something I have not told anyone," Mrs. Collins said, her voice lower now. "I have been praying for someone with a good heart to walk through that door and say, 'I will keep it as it is meant to be kept.' Not to freeze it in time, not to make it a museum, but to keep its spirit." She looked at me as if she were telling a bedtime story. It was such a tender, foolish hope that it made my throat tight. I set the ribbon on the table beside the papers. "This place is a kindness," I said. "You made it that way." Mr. Collins shook his head. "We held the door," he said. "The people made it love," he sighed. "We just need someone to hold the door now." After a few more minutes, I stood to go. I promised not to tell anyone yet. I took one cookie from a plate and wrapped it in a napkin for my walk home. They thanked me for the lemon loaf and asked me to take a flower from a vase by the door. I chose a single sprig of rosemary because it smelled like remembering. Outside, I walked to the edge of the pond and sat under the willow tree. The ground was cool. The branches made a soft sound in the air. I held the rosemary between my fingers and breathed, the way I do when I am trying to listen for a quieter voice under all the other voices. I thought about my life. I thought about my small job and my small house and my blue mug. I thought about Daniel's workshop and the day I sold it to a young man who wanted to build guitars. The money from that sale had gone into a savings account that I hardly touched. It felt like a hand on my back, steady but not pushing. I thought about my nest egg, my careful ledger, my way of making things stretch and last. Could I hold a place like Willow House? The question came like a bird landing near me. It did not startle me. It was light and real. I could take care of schedules and chairs and calm voices. I could learn what I did not know. I could make tea for nervous brides and check the weather and call the florist when the roses were late. I could be the person at the door who says, "Welcome. We are glad you are here." But there was more under the simple question. There was the deeper thing. If I did this, I must not do it from hurt. I must not use it like a lever. It could not be a way to say, "I matter too," by placing myself in charge. It had to be a way to say, "Everyone matters," by keeping a place safe for love. I looked at the water. I looked at my hands. They are not young hands. They have washed many dishes, turned many pages, held many foreheads in quiet. They are steady hands. They could hold keys. They could hold doors open. They could write policies about kindness. They could press flowers between paper and save them for later. I thought about the couples with dates circled on calendars. I thought about how a change in ownership can feel like a rug being tugged. I thought about the fairness of keeping promises. The word fairness landed in me like a stone in a pocket. It has weight, and it keeps you from blowing away. My heart was still sore from the call. The words "you're not needed" were still resting in me like a pebble in a shoe. I do not believe in making decisions to ease that kind of ache. But I do believe in walking the path I know, even when a small stone is inside my shoe. You can still walk. You walk with care. You do not pretend the stone is not there, but you do not let it decide where you are going. Across the pond, I saw the ceremony space. The white chairs were stacked for now, waiting for their next story. The arch stood empty, simple, and quiet. I pictured Evan standing there with a face that held all the parts of him I had known. The little boy with flour on his cheek, the teenager with a book open in his hand, the young man with a toolbox and an open heart. I pictured Lena next to him, her careful face softened by joy. I let myself cry a little more. Not the sharp kind, not the angry kind. The kind of tears that come when you are holding two truths at once, that you are hurt and that you will still choose love. The wind moved the willow branches like long fingers combing the air. A duck made a small sound near the bank. The world kept going in its gentle way. By the time I stood up, I had not made a decision. I had only listened to the question. I dusted off my skirt and tucked the sprig of rosemary into my pocket. I walked home slow. When I reached my kitchen, I put the rosemary in a glass of water on the windowsill. It looked like a little soldier standing at attention. That evening, I called the Collins to thank them for their honesty. I said, "If you will allow it, I might come by again and ask about the numbers. I do not know yet what I can do, but I am thinking." Mr. Collins said, "Come by any time." His voice sounded like relief, speaking carefully so it would not spill. In the days after, I did not tell anyone. I went to the bank to take a quiet look at my accounts. I opened my old ledger and sharpened my pencil. I wrote columns. I wrote words like insurance and maintenance and license fees. I wrote questions for the Collins about ovens and parking and storm plans. It felt like being back at the library desk, mending a book. You come at a tear from the back and lay down something clear and steady to keep it together. Meanwhile, the wedding talk went on without me. I heard, through the church grapevine, that there would be a modern photo booth. I heard from the baker when I stopped in for a loaf that lemon would be the theme. "It's a bright choice," he said. "Lively." I nodded and bought a small lemon tart for myself. I ate it at my table and thought about zest and how a little goes a long way. One afternoon, I ran into Janice at the grocery store. She had a cart with neat rows of sparkling water. She smiled the fine china smile. "Me," she said, "we're making progress." I said, "I'm glad." She leaned in a fraction like someone telling a quiet joke. "You know," she said, "Lena needs calm, not input. She gets overwhelmed." Her voice was smooth. "So thank you for letting us take charge. It's for the best." "I want what is best for them," I said. I kept my voice even. I did not want water to splash out of any glass. "I'm here if they need anything." She patted my arm lightly as if I were a folded blanket on a sofa. "Of course," she said. "Just be there the day of and enjoy. You don't have to worry about a thing." I watched her walk away down the aisle. I stood still for a moment, then reached for a bag of flour and held it like something old and certain. Back home, I made cinnamon rolls. I only do that when I need the house to smell like how memory feels when it is kind. I kneaded the dough and let it rise, and while it rose, I stared at the kitchen clock and listened to its tiny sound. I rolled the dough out and spread butter and browned sugar and cinnamon. I rolled it up, cut the slices, and placed them in a pan like little ears listening. When Evan stopped by later, the rolls were cooling. He smiled before he reached the counter. "Hi," he said. "I know what that smell is." He picked up a roll and broke it in half. We ate in quiet for a few minutes. He looked at me, chewing. "Mom," he said, "are you okay?" I nodded. "I am," I said. "I'm finding my seat." He tilted his head. "What does that mean?" I smiled. "It means I will be where I'm supposed to be as kindly as I can." He swallowed and looked at the middle of the table. "She didn't mean to hurt you," he said. "I know," I said. "We often hurt people we're trying to protect. It's one of the odd things we do." He took another bite. "I should have said more," he whispered. I shook my head. "You are learning how to be between people you love," I said. "It is not easy. You will get better. The getting better is part of your life now." After he left, I washed the pan and watched the swirl of water in the sink. I thought again of Willow House and the for sale folder. I thought of keys and calendars and lists. I thought of my husband and his workshop and the day we saved up for his first good saw. I thought of the way he used to say, "Hold steady, me," when he cut along a line. I decided to go back to talk to the Collins with my questions. I would not choose quickly. I would not choose from a wound. I would choose from the part of me that knows how to carry a tray without spilling. I would choose from the part of me that knows how to set a place for someone who thought they had no seat. Before bed, I walked out to the yard. The evening air smelled like grass and distant rain. I touched the rosemary plant with my fingertips and brought my hand to my face. The smell was sharp and sweet. I closed my eyes. "Help me be who I want to be," I whispered to the night. Then I went inside, turned off the kitchen light, and let the dark room hold me like an old friend. I made an appointment with the bank. I wore my neatest dress and the cardigan with the small pearl buttons. I brought my old ledger, a yellow notepad, and the folder Mr. Collins had given me with the event calendar. The bank smelled like paper and carpet cleaner and a little like coffee. The manager's name was Ms. Patel. She had kind eyes and a careful way of speaking. She invited me into her small glass office and offered me water. I placed my papers on the desk and folded my hands. "I would like to buy Willow House," I said. My voice sounded steady. "The owners are retiring. They want someone to keep it as a place for events as it has always been." Ms. Patel nodded slowly, the way someone listens when a person has brought both a plan and a heart. We looked at numbers. I showed her my savings. I explained the money from the sale of Daniel's workshop that I had kept as an emergency cushion. We looked at the calendar of bookings already on the books. "Tight," she said, tapping the edge of the paper with a pen. "But possible." She drew a small square around the word possible, as if she wanted to hold it still for a moment. "There will be months where the air will feel thin," she added, "but you seem steady." "I am steady," I said. "I can live with thin air if there is a path." She smiled at that. It was not a big smile. It was a "we will try" smile. She explained the kind of loan she could offer. She talked about payments and a timeline. I took notes in my neat hand, 1 word per line. "Do you have help?" she asked. "The current owners," I said. "They have offered to stay nearby as mentors for a year. We would put that in writing. I would be grateful for their hands." Ms. Patel nodded again and wrote the word mentor on her pad. "That is good," she said. "People are often buying more than a building. They are buying a way of doing things." When I walked home later, the sky was a pale blue that made the trees look like cutouts. I held the bank's paper in my bag like a fragile egg. I made tea and sat with my ledger. I drew columns. I wrote the words insurance and licensing and cleaning supplies. I wrote the word kindness on a separate line. It is not a bill, but if you do not pay it, everything else feels expensive. The next day, I met with Mr. and Mrs. Collins at Willow House. We sat at the round table again. Ellen poured tea. Thomas set out a plate of shortbread like a peace offering. We placed the papers between us and looked at them like we were reading a map. "We can stay nearby for a year," Mr. Collins said. "Not in the way, just available. We will walk you through the seasons. We will teach you when to look at the weather report and when to look at the sky. We will show you where the old extension cords are and the trick to the back door when it swells in the rain." Mrs. Collins took my hand. Her hand was thin and warm. "We are not selling to bow out," she said. "We are selling to hand off. There is a difference." Her eyes shone a little. "We will be here when the first bride cries because a button has popped. We have a sewing kit in the top left drawer. We will show you the needle that never breaks." I laughed softly. It felt good to laugh with them. "Can I run a place that holds people's biggest days?" I asked, and my voice was small but honest. I looked at my hands. "I am good with rooms. I can make them feel safe. I can hold a calm line. I can make tea when nerves shake. I can count chairs without getting angry. But can I be the person at the door and also the person who knows where the light switches are?" I looked up. "That is my question." Mr. Collins smiled. "You just answered it," he said. "You care about the right things. The right things will carry you through the hard things." He slid a small brass key across the table. "Take this for a day," he said. "Walk the house. Come and go without us. Listen to it. If it says yes to you, we will find a way." I took the key. It felt heavy and good in my palm. That afternoon, I walked through Willow House alone. I ran my hand over the smooth banister. I stood in the ceremony clearing by the pond and listened to the water move. I stood in the kitchen and opened cupboards and soft-closed them again. I whispered, "Can I hold you?" to the rooms. It felt odd and holy. Nights passed with prayerful thinking. I slept and woke and counted in the dark. I talked to Daniel quietly, in the way widows speak to a memory that still has a chair in the room. "I think I can do this," I told him. "I think we can keep a place for love." I pictured him smiling and saying, "Hold steady me, measure twice, cut once." I did not talk to Evan about it. I did not want my choice to be about him. I wanted it to be about who I am when I am not anyone's mother, who I am when I am just me at a table with a blue mug. I spoke to God and to the night air and to my rosemary plant. They all said nothing and everything. At the end of a week, I signed the papers. The Collins sat on one side of the desk, and I sat on the other, and the lawyer slid forms to me like plates at a long table. I wrote my name in the same careful way I had learned in the 3rd grade. We shook hands. Mr. Collins dabbed his eyes with a handkerchief. Mrs. Collins squeezed my shoulder. I held the set of keys as if they might sing. "I will honor all existing contracts," I said before I stood. "Every deposit, every date, every promise. I will not change the terms on anyone." The lawyer nodded. "We will write that into the transition letter." Ellen clasped her hands. "Thank you." I kept it quiet. I did not make an announcement. I asked the Collins if we could tell the booked couples together with a letter and a kind invitation to meet me. They agreed. After the first week, we decided, when the papers are filed, I agreed to keep my own son's event under my ordinary care, no special treatment, no hidden harm. I hired a manager, a young woman named Grace. I knew her from the library when she was a teenager who shelved books with the spines all facing exactly the same way. She had studied hospitality at the community college and had helped an aunt run a bed and breakfast for 2 summers. She had a warm voice and a way of seeing a task as a person would see it. We met at the round table with tea and a clean notebook. "Grace," I said, "this place runs on kindness, details, and time." She smiled. "3 things I love," she said. We walked through the rooms together. I showed her the pantry, the first aid kit, the drawer with the extra lighters for candles. She took notes like a musician hears a tune and remembers. I wrote a short policy for the front of the operations binder. It was 1 page. At the top, I wrote, "House kindness policy." Underneath, in simple sentences, I wrote, "In this house, family is treated with care. Both parents or guardians are given a row near the front, as customs allow. Names are spelled right, seats are saved with respect, and no one is erased. We will work with every family's story, with gentleness and firm fairness. We are here to help, not to push. We are here to include, not to intrude." I read it to Grace out loud. She listened with her hands folded. "Yes," she said, "these are simple and clear. I can carry these." She paused. "If someone objects," I smiled. "We listen, we explain, we hold the line." We spent mornings learning how to set up a room in half the time. We made checklists. We labeled boxes. The Collins came by and taught us how to place chairs so that the aisle looks straight even if the ground is not. They showed us how to tie a loose bouquet with a ribbon that will not slip. They told us which caterers needed a reminder to bring extra lemons. There were small events in the weeks that followed. A birthday, a retirement party, a tiny wedding for 2 people who had waited many years. We practiced the policy in small ways. We saved a seat for a nervous aunt who had driven a long way. We made sure a stepfather and a father both had a place near the front, side by side, away from old pain, close to new joy. I slept tired and happy. My body learned the rhythm of weekends. My hands learned the dance of keys and lists and lights. Sometimes, late at night, I walked through the empty house and said thank you to the rooms. The rooms did not answer, but they felt like a deep breath. The letter to all booked couples went out with my name on it. It said, "Dear friends, we are the same house with the same heart. The owners have changed, the care has not. We honor all promises. Please come by for tea if you want to meet me." Warmly, me. People wrote back with small thanks. A few came to sit with me and ask about bugs or bathrooms or music. I answered each question as if it were the only one. Evan and Lena did not come. They did not need to. All their details were already in place, or so I had heard from Grace. I did not press. I knew Grace would hold them with the same fairness she held everyone. I reminded her one more time at the end of a long day. "Treat them like any other," I said. "Kind, fair, firm." The seating plan conversation arrived as an email. Grace came to my office with a printout and that particular look she had when she was about to propose a gentle battle. "We have a seating plan from Lena's mother," she said. She placed the paper in front of me. "She wants the mother of the groom placed in row 8. "Row 8, I repeated, as if the words were a foreign phrase. I looked at the sketch. The first 2 rows on the groom's side were labeled friends who photograph well. The mother of the groom was far back, near an aisle with a note, placed discreetly for flow. Grace touched the edge of the paper. "She also asked that the mother of the groom not be listed in the program," she said softly. "She said it will look cleaner. She said photos will be more balanced." Grace's face was careful, not angry. "I wanted to bring this to you before I reply." I breathed. I placed my finger on the policy page on my desk. I could feel the paper's texture, thin but strong. "Our policy says both parents or guardians get a row near the front," I said. "We can move between first or second row depending on elders and custom, but far back is not fair." Grace nodded. "I know," she said. "I will tell her." Grace wrote a kind reply. She explained the policy. She said we would be happy to place additional friends in the second row, but the mother of the groom would be seated in the family rows. She said we wanted their photos to be beautiful in the truest way, with love included and no one missing. She pressed send, and we both went to make tea because that is what we do when we have to hold a line. The phone rang an hour later. It was Janice. "I need to speak to the owner," she said. Her voice was smooth as stone. Grace kept her voice warm. "You are," she said. "I manage the house." "I want the owner," Janice repeated, as if Grace and managers were appetizers and she wanted the main dish. "I can help you with any decision," Grace said kindly. "House policy applies to every event. It keeps everything fair and calm for all families. We can adjust flowers and music and many things. Seating for immediate family is something we do steady." There was a pause. "I will discuss this at the final walkthrough," Janice said at last. "I expect the owner to be present." After the call, Grace looked at me. "Do you want to come?" she asked. "I will lead, you can stay behind me." I smiled. "Yes," I said. "I will come, I will stay quiet unless I am needed. This is not a scene, this is a room." Grace nodded. "It is a room," she agreed. "We keep rooms safe." The day of the final walkthrough came bright and warm. I wore simple clothes and the necklace Daniel had given me on a birthday long ago. I put my hair back. I stood in the hallway for a moment and reminded myself to breathe in through my nose and out through my mouth. Grace moved through the house with her checklist. She was wind and stillness at the same time. Evan and Lena arrived with the photographer, the DJ, and 2 bridesmaids. Janice walked in with a tablet and a tape measure. She looked around as if the house were a student late to class. I stayed in the background, near the kitchen, where I could see but not be a shadow over anything. Grace gathered everyone in the reception room. "Welcome," she said. "We'll walk the ceremony route, review timing, and confirm seating, then we will breathe." A few people smiled. The photographer asked about light. The DJ asked about outlets. Grace answered. The air was calm. We walked to the ceremony clearing. The willow branches moved like slow hands. Grace pointed out where the chairs would be, where the arch would stand, where the couple would pause for one breath before stepping into the aisle. Evan took Lena's hand. They both looked like they were standing on a small boat, steadying together. When we reached the topic of seating, Grace took a kind breath. "We follow a simple practice," she said. "Parents and guardians near the front, first or second row depending on elders and wedding party. We have reserved signs that are small and clear." She held up a little card in her hand. Janice lifted her chin. "We will put the mother of the groom in row 8, she said quickly. "Our photographer has a style. The front will be the wedding party only. The mother of the bride will be seated front row on our side, as is customary." Her voice was confident, like a woman ordering a cake she had already decided on. Grace's voice stayed even. "We can seat the wedding party front row if that is your preference," she said. "We will then seat parents in the second row. That will be the same on both sides." Janice smiled tightly. "We are not making this political," she said. "We are making it beautiful." Grace kept her eyes soft. "Beauty and fairness live well together here," she said. I felt proud of her. Janice's mouth pressed into a line. "I would like to speak to the owner," she said again, sharper now. "Now." Grace glanced at me. I gave a small nod. She turned back to the group. "The owner is here," she said. "Me." The room shifted the way a room does when someone stands. I stepped forward from the edge of the group. My steps were small. I kept my hands open at my sides. Evan's eyes widened. "Mom," he said, barely sound. Lena's face went white, then pink, then something softer. Janice blinked twice. "You," she said. Her voice carried disbelief like a coat. I nodded. "Yes," I said. "I bought Willow House." I looked at each of them one by one so the words would land gently. "I bought it to keep it open for everyone. I will not use it to hurt you. But in this place we will treat each other with respect." Silence is a strange sound in a group. It has shapes. It moved around us like a slow breeze. Lena's lips trembled. "You bought it," she whispered. She looked at Evan, then at me. Shame and surprise and relief crossed her face like clouds. I kept my voice calm. "This is not a weapon," I said. "It is a home for love, that is all." I turned to Janice. "Our policy is simple and applies to all families. Parents or guardians near the front. If you wish the wedding party to take the first row, we will seat parents in the second. It will be the same on both sides. We will note names correctly. We will set chairs with care. We can still make your photos balanced and your day beautiful." Janice looked at me, at Grace, at Lena. She opened her mouth. She closed it. She took a breath through her nose. "Fine," she said at last, as if the word were a stone she had to set down. "Second row for parents." Her shoulders were stiff. She wrote something on her tablet with more pressure than needed. I turned to Grace. "Thank you," I said. "Please continue with the walkthrough." Grace nodded and moved into the next item with ease. She was a blessing in a tidy skirt. People asked more questions. The sun filtered through the leaves. The day did not break. Evan came to me in a quiet moment near the porch steps. His face was pale. "Mom," he said. "You, when?" His eyes searched mine. I put my hand on his arm. "After some nights of thinking," I said. "I kept it quiet because this was not about the wedding. It was about this place. I needed to do it from the right place in me." He swallowed. "You should have told me." His voice was part boy, part man. "Perhaps," I said, "but I needed to carry it to the door myself. I was afraid it would become something else if I told you too soon." He nodded, still stunned. "Okay," he said. "Okay." He looked out at the water. "It makes sense," he whispered. "It all makes sense." Lena stood a few feet away, clutching a small notebook. Her eyes were wet. She approached like someone crossing a thin bridge. "Me," she said, and her voice cracked. "Can we talk, just us?" I nodded. "Yes," I said. "Of course." We walked to the side porch where the house looks out over the garden beds. The boards creaked in a friendly way. I leaned on the rail. Lena stood with her back to the sun, so her face was shaded. Her hands were shaking a little. I could see the little breaths she was taking to make her words come out right. "I said something to you," she began. "You know what I said." She bit her lip. "I said, you're not needed at the wedding." She repeated it now like it hurt. "I hear it over and over in my head. I hate that I said it." I looked at her. "I know you were trying to make the day light," I said. "I know you were trying to keep me from work, but the words landed heavy. They made me feel like air." I kept my tone soft. I did not want to add any weight that was not mine to add. She nodded up and down like a child saying sorry with her whole body. "My mom has a way," she said. "She has a way of filling a room. I wanted to please her and also please you and also keep breathing. I thought if I made the circle small, I could control it." She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "I am not proud of that." I pulled a small packet of tissues from my pocket. I always carry them now. I handed her one. She took it and pressed it to her face. "I am afraid a lot," she said in a small voice. "I am afraid I will not be enough, not pretty enough, not calm enough, not something enough. My mom's standards are like the edge of a cup. If I do not line up, I feel like a spill." I let her speak. Sometimes a person does not need a reply. They need a space to put their words down. "I said that thing to you because I was trying to be in charge of something," she finished. "I wanted to be in charge of my own day." "But I hurt you. I can see that I hurt you." I looked out at the garden for a long breath. The rosemary made its straight shape. The time filled in with kindness. The sun warmed the railing under my hand. "I forgive you," I said. I turned back to her. "Not because I am so good, because I choose to be in your life, and forgiveness is how we keep walking near each other." Tears came to her eyes again, the slow kind. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for staying anyway." She took another breath. "How can we make this right?" "We tell the truth," I said. "We tell the truth to ourselves first. The truth is you love my son. The truth is I love you because you love my son. The truth is we both were afraid of different things. And we can make small changes that honor everyone without making a new wound." She nodded. "I can ask my mom to step back a little," she said. Her voice was steady. "I can say no to some of the ways she talks about the day. I can tell her the seating is not hers to control. I can tell her I want you near." She looked down at her hands. "Do you want to be near?" "I want to be where I belong," I said. "Near enough to see you and to be seen. Not in the center, not on a stage, just in the family row like any mother. And I will be joyful. I will clap. I will eat cake and dance a little badly. I will go home tired and happy. That is what I want." She gave a small, wet laugh. "I want that too," she said. I want to look over and see you smiling. I want to let go of this tightness in my chest. She folded the tissue in half and then in half again, like a little flag. I want to make my own choices with love, not with fear. We stood there for a few minutes without speaking, the way you stand with someone at a grave or a new baby's crib. The sound of the willow leaves was like a whisper. The house seemed to lean toward us with its old, kind listening. Your mother will not love everything I do, I said, because I believe in preparing a heart gently for what is true. And I will not love everything she does. But we can hold a line together that says, this day belongs to the two of you and we are guests of your love. Lena nodded, a slow, deep nod that looked like acceptance. She straightened. I will talk to her, she said, not with anger, with a steady voice. I will tell her I am grateful and that I have a husband now and that we will make our own family choices. Her eyes were clear now. I can do that. I touched her shoulder, light as a moth. Good, I said, and if your voice shakes, you can still say it. She smiled a little. Okay. We walked back to the group. The DJ was testing a song. The sound floated over the pond and came back in a softer echo. Evan looked at us with a question on his face. Lena took his hand. We're okay, she said. He exhaled. He looked at me. I nodded and gave him the look I give him when a plan is finally a plan. Janice watched us from near the arch. Her expression was complicated. I did not try to name it. Not everything needs a label right away. Sometimes a feeling needs time to learn its own name. Grace stepped up and asked about the timing for the toasts. Lena answered with more confidence than before. The day itself felt a half-inch closer. As we finished the walkthrough, I held back and let the others lead. I stood in the doorway of the main room and watched the light move across the floor. I thought of all the feet that would cross that light, all the tears that would splash on that wood. We had made a small correction today, like adjusting a picture frame so it hangs straight. It was not dramatic. It was necessary. When everyone left, Grace came to stand beside me. You were brave, she said. You were kind, I replied. She looked out at the willow branches. We can do this, she said. We can keep this house soft and strong. I nodded. Yes, I said, we can. I locked the door and held the keys in my hand for a moment before dropping them into my pocket. They felt heavier and lighter at the same time. I walked home under a sky that had kept its promise all day. I put the kettle on. I breathed. I wrote one sentence in my notebook before bed. We chose love out loud today. We began again with small, kind hands, not with sweeping change, not with new rules shouted in a room. We started with a quiet meeting at a round table, just me, Grace, and Lena, with a sheet of paper and 2 pens between us. The window was open, and the willow leaves made their soft sound like breathing. We will change the seating, Lena said before I could speak. Her voice was steady now. Second row for parents, as we discussed. Wedding party front row if they still want it. She looked at me. You will be near. Thank you, I said. I let the words sit. I did not add anything extra. Grace made a neat note on her clipboard. I'll print new signs, she said. I'll make sure names are spelled correctly on the reserved cards. She looked up. We will set them early and hold the line kindly. There were a few other small things Lena wanted to soften. She asked to take a few candles off the tables so the room would feel less busy. She asked for the music to start a breath later so the processional could be a true walk and not a rush. Grace wrote everything down. Nothing felt dramatic. It felt like a dress being altered to fit a real person. I asked for one thing in return. I waited until the end when the air felt calm. I have a small detail from home, I said. Nothing center stage. I put a small glass jar on the table. It was clear and simple, the kind you find in a kitchen. Inside, I placed a sprig of rosemary from my garden. For remembrance, I said. If you would like, we can set it on a side table near the guest book. It will not draw attention. It will be a quiet companion. Lena's eyes filled. She touched the jar lightly with her fingertip, as if she were testing its warmth. Yes, she whispered. Please. Grace smiled and wrote, Rosemary, side table, guest book in her tidy print. It felt like setting down a small piece of home without making a new weight for anyone to carry. At home that evening, I went to the linen drawer and took out Daniel's old blue shirt. It was soft from many washes. The collar was frayed. I had set it aside months earlier when I was thinking about what lasts. I cut a careful square from the back, where the fabric was still strong. I hemmed the edges with my small stitches, the ones I learned as a girl. The needle passed in and out of the cloth like a small boat on a quiet lake. When I was finished, I held the handkerchief up to the window. The light made it look like a sky held in my hands. I folded it in half and then in half again. I tied a piece of white thread around it so it would not open before it was invited to. I placed it in a small box with a note. Something blue, something old, something steady. I brought it to Evan the next afternoon. He was at his apartment. Straightening ties that all looked the same to me, he opened the door and smiled like a boy who had just been caught playing with tools. "Hey, Mom," he said. "Come in." I held out the small box. "A simple thing," I said. "From your father's shirt, if you wish to carry it." He opened the box slowly. The blue square lay there like a small piece of sky that had forgotten how to be large. He touched it with the tips of his fingers. He did not speak for a moment. Then he said in a voice that made my throat tight, "Something blue, something old." He looked at me. "Something steady." He took a breath. "I will carry it." We stood there in his small living room with the afternoon light coming in at an angle. He looked like himself at all ages at once. He put the handkerchief back in the box as carefully as if it were breathing. "Thank you," he said, "for this, for everything." The rehearsal dinner was held at the church hall down the street. It is a simple room with folding chairs and a linoleum floor that has seen every kind of meal, from chili cook-offs to funeral casseroles. There were string lights hung along the wall, and someone had put a bunch of daisies in a jar on each table. It felt like the kind of room where people tell the truth by accident. Families gathered with plates in their hands. There was lasagna and salad and garlic bread that made the whole place smell like welcome. People talked in small clusters. Laughter rose and fell. I found a seat near the end of a table and ate quietly. I watched Evan and Lena move through the room like a pair who were learning how to be hosts and still hold each other's fingers. When it was time for toasts, someone tapped a glass with a fork. A few friends spoke, kind and funny. Janice offered a short speech about excellence and family. Her words were polished like stones from a river. When the room grew soft, I stood. I do not like to speak in crowds. My words are usually the kind you say over a sink or a small table, but I felt a nudge in my chest that said, "Give them a gentle blessing." I held my glass with both hands. "Thank you for loving my son," I said to the room. "Thank you for loving Lena." I looked from one set of parents to the other. "Thank you for all the days that brought them to this day. Thank you for the hours you drove, the meals you cooked, the hard talks, the small kindnesses. We are all here because of those things." I took a breath. I asked for grace for all families who are learning how to share. We are learning new shapes for our love. May we be kind while we learn. I lifted my glass. To Evan and Lena. The room murmured back. To Evan and Lena. After people touched my arm as they passed, the way you do when you want to say, "I heard you." Janice did not say anything to me. That was all right. Not every door has to open at once. I helped gather plates. I wiped a spill. I stood by a trash bag and held it open while people scraped. It felt right. It felt like being part of the work without being in charge. Later that night, Evan found me by the stack of folded chairs. He looked a little tired and a little tender. He put his hands in his pockets, then took them out, then put them back in. "Mom," he said, "can we have a minute?" I nodded, and we stepped into the hallway where the soda machine hums. He leaned against the wall. "I am sorry I didn't speak up sooner," he said. The words came out in a rush. "About the seating, about the way things felt, I wanted to keep peace and I let that become silence. That was not fair to you. I see that now." I looked at him. I saw the boy who nodded when he asked for permission. I saw the man who was trying to learn a new balance. "Growing up means learning when to hold your ground," I said. "It also means learning when to forgive yourself. You are allowed to learn in public. You are allowed to course correct." I touched his cheek with my fingertips. "I forgive you for being new at this." He pulled me into a hug. He held me tight like he did when he was small and had a nightmare and needed to know the world was still there. "Thank you," he whispered. "I love you." I put my hand between his shoulder blades and rubbed once, slow. "I love you too," I said. We stood for a moment and let the hum of the soda machine be our silence. The morning of the wedding arrived with sunshine sifting through willow leaves. The air felt washed and clean. The entire house woke early. Grace and the staff moved like kind birds, quick and soft. The kitchen hummed with trays and tea and fruit. I dropped off 2 breakfast trays that I had ordered ahead, one for the bridal room, one for the groom's room. They held small sandwiches, fruit, a few lemon pastries, and little bottles of water with a ribbon. I knocked, stepped in, set them down, and stepped back. "Thank you, me," one of the bridesmaids said. She looked like she wanted to hug me and was afraid to spill anything. I smiled. "You are welcome," I said. I did not linger. In the hallway, I whispered a tiny prayer, the kind that does not ask for miracles, only for calm. "Let love be seen," I said to the quiet. I half-watched the preparations from the edges. I kept to my promise. I checked the guest book table and straightened a pen. I placed the little glass jar of rosemary on the side table and tucked the sprig so it stood straight. I wrote a small card that said, "For remembrance," and I placed it in a little frame. It felt like setting down a gentle word and then stepping away. Evan came down the hallway in his suit. He looked taller, but that may have been my heart. He saw me and stopped. He touched his pocket. "I have it," he said, and he tapped the square where the blue handkerchief rested. I nodded. "Good," I said. We did not need more words. Guests arrived in their good clothes. The white chairs were set in rows that looked like they had always been there. The pond held the sky like a friend. The willow branches moved slow, the way a blessing moves when it is not in a hurry. Grace saved the seats near the front with small, reserved signs, my name spelled right, Janice's name spelled right, everyone in their place. I took my seat in the second row on the groom's side. My hands were folded in my lap because that is the most peaceful shape they know. Across the aisle, Janice sat. She looked beautiful and composed. She looked over for a moment, our eyes met. We gave each other a small nod. It was not friendship. It was a ceasefire. That was enough for today. The music began. Slow, simple. The wedding party walked with the careful smiles people wear when they want to do it right. Evan stood at the front with his best man. He shifted his weight once and then found stillness. When he saw Lena at the end of the aisle, the look on his face made my eyes fill. Lena walked like someone who had found her own legs. Her dress moved with her, not against her. The sun caught the edge of her veil and made a soft light around her. She glanced at me as she came close. Our eyes touched. I smiled. It was a small, full smile, the kind you give when there are no words that do not tip the balance. The officiant spoke. He talked about choices and patience and the way love is a verb. Evan took out the blue handkerchief once and pressed it to his eyes. It looked right there. It looked like a steady thing doing a steady job. Lena spoke her promise. Her voice did not shake. She looked at Evan the whole time, and then, at the end, she looked at me again and then back at him, a quick flicker of gratitude moving through her face. They said, "I do," with the quiet strength I had hoped for. They kissed. The room breathed. People clapped and some cried. The wind moved through the willow leaves like a soft cheer. The pond held the sound and gave it back gentle. After the ceremony, there were photos on the lawn. Grace moved people where they needed to go with a voice like a ribbon. "Now parents," she said, and I stepped forward. There was no fuss, no announcement, no story told. I stood beside my son. I placed my hand on his arm. The photographer said, 1, 2, 3, and the camera clicked. It felt like a page in a book turned carefully. We did photos with grandparents, photos with friends, busy and quick. I missed Daniel. I felt the shape of him not there. Then I felt the shape of him there in the blue handkerchief and in the way Evan's mouth turned when he tried not to cry. That is how love works after death. It is gone and it is here. You learn to hold both. Janice came to me later by the guest book table. She looked at the little jar with rosemary and then at me. Her face was thoughtful, not sharp. "Thank you for letting it be beautiful," she said. The sentence surprised me. It was not an apology. It was a door. "You're welcome," I said. "Thank you for all the work you did." We stood together for a breath. We did not try to do anything more than that. The reception flowed like a good song. People laughed and ate and took small breaks to step outside and breathe the evening air. The first dance made everyone quiet. Evan looked at Lena and looked like he had found a piece of home he did not know he had been missing. They moved slow, not to show off, but to be near. The willow branches moved like a blessing behind them. Cake was served. It tasted like lemon and sunshine. I ate my slice standing near the back door, looking out at the water. Grace brought me a napkin when a bit of icing tried to wander. "Thank you," I said. "We did it," she smiled. "You did it," she said back. "You held a room with your heart." There were speeches that made people laugh and a few that made them dab their eyes. The DJ played songs that made even old legs move. I danced a little badly, just like I had promised. Evan danced with me for one song. He held my hand the way a son holds a mother's hand in public, respectful and close. "Happy?" he asked. "Yes," I said. The word felt like warm bread. Later, I walked by the side table where the rosemary sat. A small child had touched the sprig and left it slightly bent. I straightened it, the way you do with a picture frame. The air around the table smelled faintly green. People had signed the guest book with kind words. I added a tiny dot at the end of a sentence where it was missing. Old habits do not sleep, even at weddings. When the night thinned, the lights outside looked like little stars. Evan and Lena said goodbye to people in waves. They hugged and laughed and held envelopes and flowers and hands. Janice hugged her daughter hard, the way mothers do when they are letting go and holding on at the same time. She did not look at me then. She did not need to. I helped carry a tray back to the kitchen and thanked the caterers. I thanked the DJ and the photographer and the person who had kept the bathrooms neat. I told Grace she could take tomorrow morning off, and she laughed and said, "You too." And we both knew we would still come early to check on things because that is who we are. When it was finally quiet, I walked the empty rooms alone. I do that after events now. I pick up a napkin. I fix a chair. I find a flower petal on the floor and put it in my pocket. I turned off lights. I locked doors. The house felt like it had known what to do all along and had simply waited for us to listen. At home, I took off my shoes and sat at the kitchen table. The blue mug was there, waiting for tomorrow morning. I put the sprig of rosemary from the guest book table into a glass of water by the window. I touched the fabric of Daniel's old shirt in the drawer and thanked it for being what it had been. I wrote in my notebook, "We kept a place for love. We kept a seat." I slept the sleep of someone who has put down a heavy box gently. In the morning, I walked to Willow House with a bag for lost and found and a soft cloth. The sun was already warming the porch. A bird scolded me for being late, though I was early. Grace arrived with a smile and a thermos. We stood for a moment and listened to the quiet. "What now?" she asked. It was a playful question. I said, "Now we do the next right thing." She laughed. "Always." We opened the door and let the fresh air in. The room sighed like a person stretching after a long, beautiful day. The small changes we had made did not look like much on paper. A seating chart adjusted. A little jar with rosemary. A square of blue cloth in a pocket. A toast about Grace. But together they had made a different shape for the day. A shape where everyone had a place, even the parts of us that were still learning, even the parts that were still afraid. I think that is what a good house does. It holds the shape of a day so people can be themselves inside it. It does not decide the feelings. It makes room for them. It does not demand perfection. It offers chairs and light and a steady floor. After lunch, I went to see Evan and Lena for a few minutes. They were at their apartment, with flowers everywhere and shoes in odd places. They looked tired and happy. They had that look people have when they have stepped through a door and are still feeling the frame. "How do you feel?" I asked. Evan laughed. "Married," he said. Lena leaned on the back of the couch and smiled. "Loved," she added. She walked to me and hugged me. "Thank you," she said, her voice low. "For staying when it was hard, for not using anything to hurt anyone, for choosing a seat instead of a spotlight." "I chose what I could live with," I said. "I chose what would let me sleep and wake and make tea." I looked at both of them. "Now you will make your choices. You will have days when you are kind and days when you are clumsy. You will try again. That is marriage." They nodded. We did not need to say much more. I left them to their new quiet and walked home under a sky that looked ordinary and therefore holy. I watered the garden. I put the leftover lemon pastry in a tin. I washed the blue mug and set it on the counter to dry. That evening, as the light folded itself up, I went back to Willow House to check one last thing. I walked to the ceremony clearing. The chairs were already stacked, their work done. The arch stood simple. The pond held the day like a friend that keeps your secrets. I stood under the willow and listened as the air told me everything and nothing. We had found our way to a fair place. Not perfect, not without bumps, but fair. For me, that is enough. For me, that is the kind of beauty that lasts. After the wedding, the house and I settled into each other. I learned the rhythm of weekends the way you learn a song by heart. Fridays smelled like floor polish and fresh lemons. Saturdays began with dew on the grass and the sound of chairs being unfolded in a careful beat. Sundays were for sweeping petals into a soft little pile and for finding tiny notes tucked under plates that said, "Thank you," with a small heart drawn beside the words. People taught me how they say gratitude without big speeches. A hand on mine at the door. Eyes that shine for a moment and then look away. An older man who pressed a folded note into my palm and whispered, "You made room for my wife who cannot be seen." A young bride who hugged me like I was a cousin. Roses and floor polish became my two steady scents. I began to think of myself as the keeper of both. We added one tradition that felt right as soon as it had a name. On the second row, at every ceremony, we place a small card that reads, "Reserved for love." It is for any missing parent, any quiet guardian, any person who cannot be there or who stands back in the shadows. Sometimes the seat stays empty, and that is the point. Sometimes a hand rests on it for a moment. Sometimes we tuck a sprig of rosemary there, and the air around it smells like remembering. It tells the room that stories do not begin on a wedding day. They have been moving toward this moment for a long time. Grace runs with it. She sets that card with the same care she gives to the cake knife and the aisle runner. Couples often ask about it. We tell them it is an option. Many nod with soft faces and say, "Yes." I have seen a groom touch the back of that chair before he walked forward, just once, as if he were being steadied by a hand he loved. I have seen a mother look at it and breathe deeper. It is a small thing that says a big truth gently. The Collins come by sometimes with a box of cookies and a story about the old days. We sit on the porch and listen to the willow leaves. They like that the house is busy. They like that the light switches are still in the same place. They laugh when I tell them I finally learned the trick to the back door when it swells. I thank them for their patience and their trust. We say goodbye with a promise to keep the heart of the place soft and strong. Life with Lena has found an easy shape. She texts me pictures of dinners she is trying, and I send back simple notes. She came over one Saturday morning and asked me for the cinnamon roll method. We stood at my counter with flour on our hands, and I showed her the way the dough should feel under your palms, not too sticky, not too proud. We waded through the rise. We changed the towel once because it looked heavy with breath. She laughed at herself and then stopped laughing and listened to the dough instead. When we ate a roll hot from the pan, she closed her eyes. "Now I understand," she said. We both did. In the spring, Evan dug a hole behind Willow House, and Lena and I planted a young willow tree together. We pressed the dirt around it with our hands. We took turns with the watering can, slow and sure. The leaves were tiny then, like promises. We looked at the big willow near the pond and then back at this small one, and we did not say anything out loud because the feeling already spoke. Every now and then, Janice and I cross paths at family gatherings. We greet each other. Our words are measured and civil, and that is fine. We do not need to be more than we are. The wedding changed something without forcing anything. A ceasefire can be a kind of peace when people are careful with it. I am careful. If you are listening to me now, I want to tell you plainly, buying Willow House was never revenge. It was a promise I made to protect a place where love is welcomed with fairness. I did not want power. I wanted steadiness. I wanted a room that says, "Everyone here matters," without raising its voice. I learned that boundaries can be soft and still strong. I learned that saying, "Here, we do respect," does not require sharpness. It requires standing where you said you would stand and holding the door. I also learned something about being seen. Sometimes the kindest way to be seen is to stay, not to vanish, not to take the stage, to remain in your seat, open-hearted, clear, and ready to clap for someone else, to set a small jar of rosemary on a table and then step back, to put a blue handkerchief in a pocket and never point to it again. Presence is not a spotlight. It is a steady lamp. So here is my small hope for you. Keep a seat open for love, even when you feel pushed to the back. Write "reserved for love" on a card in your own way and place it inside your day. Leave a little space for what has shaped you and for what you cannot yet see. Love will find its way to that seat. It always does. And when it sits down, you will know it by the quiet in your chest and the way your hands fold, peaceful and full.